Hello, art friends. My name is Fleshwad, and if you aren't aware, right now Texas is going through a very hard time, myself included. We have experienced pretty heavy snow, which has never happened here, or at least not in a very long time. A lot of families are without power, without water, and we're just going through it. Today, I decided to compile a couple of snowy, scary stories for you. Enjoy. The Day It Snowed Forever. Posted by you/Mr. Skulk. We have a simple relationship with the snow. It falls, we move it out of our way. Whether we shovel, blow, plow, or throw it around, this relationship holds. Sometimes the snow is dry, sometimes it's wet, sometimes only a little bit falls, and sometimes a lot. Sure, there are days where the snowfall goes on, a seemingly never-ending static on our view of the real world, but it has to stop at some point, right? It started falling in our city last week, which isn't too strange, it's winter after all. But it hasn't stopped falling. The constant, relentless, quiet attack of snowflakes has been going on for 9 days and 13 hours, give or take a few minutes. It hasn't shown any sign of slowing down. On the first day, it was great for families. Kids love playing in the snow, and their rosy cheeks said it all. On the second day, it was so deep only the bigger kids could trudge through it. On the third day, all of the kids stopped coming. The parents, likely exhausted from dealing with the preparation and the aftermath of these daily adventures. I guess people stopped traveling much by then, because you couldn't hear cars or planes zooming about. It got very quiet then. Local news channels became all weather, all the time. Weather reports didn't see it coming and everyone scrambled to explain it. They couldn't even show us radar images because the snow didn't show up on their fancy machines. But you couldn't deny it was there. I got a good laugh watching some of those folk on the news standing in the falling snow with a weather forecast showing nothing but sun and a radar map showing clear skies. It was hilarious. My TV stopped working on the fourth day and I stopped laughing. In any other situation, you would look outside and think how peaceful it was. Maybe you'd be bundled up, snuggled with your family, drinking hot chocolate and marshmallows, enjoying the special type of quiet that comes with snowfall. That's not the case this time. I shoveled twice a day. The snow kept coming. It's not particularly heavy to lift and my back doesn't protest too much. I've been bored since I retired last month, so I don't mind the activity. It keeps me busy, and God knows I could stand to lose a pound or 10. But the piles on my lawn are nearly my height, and soon I won't have anywhere left to put the stuff. Sometimes I find snow in places I just shoveled, and I like to imagine it's reaching out to me. I assume it's just fallen off the pile because it had nowhere else to go. There's no wind to blow it around. Just calm, constant snow. I haven't seen any snowplows come by since the 5th day. The last one was so badly maintained it looked like it was falling apart, shaking and rattling as it pushed fluffy mountains aside. If I didn't know better, I would have said it was deteriorating in real time. The driver seemed stressed. His face was beet red and he was yelling. Likely frustrated having to go over the same roads day after day, hour after hour, only to look back and see the unrelenting force of nature filling the void he created. Must be a hard job. I don't blame him for taking some time off. My shoveling schedule finally aligned with my neighbor's on the 6th day, and we ran into each other. Young guy in his late 20s, lives by himself in that big house. Acts like a bit of a hotshot sometimes, but he's usually nice. He came out to shovel wearing shorts and a t-shirt, making me look ridiculous in my full-body snowsuit. We talked a bit, mostly about the weather, but We focused on getting the snow off of our respective driveways and sidewalks. By the time he was done, his arms and legs were beet red, probably from the cold air and trying to be a hero. When he wiped his forehead, I swear the same red color spread exactly where his hands made contact. I saw Hotshot again on the 7th day. I was shoveling as usual. He came out to get the mail, walking calmly through the sea of powder in the same shorts and t-shirt he wore the day before. I'm not sure how he moved so easily through the stuff. He looked incredibly pale, almost paper white, and the red marks on his body were gone. The smile on his face was so wide it might have ripped at the seams if it were any bigger. I greeted him, but his only reply was to stare off into the sky and to somehow smile even harder. I haven't seen him since, and he hasn't bothered coming out to clean. The snow is most of the way up his front door. I worry that much snow on a house would damage something. I tried calling him, but he hasn't answered. Reception has been spotty these days. I hope he's okay. The snow kept falling, as it has been. I've run out of space to put the stuff. Other than to push the snow onto my neighbor's driveway, he doesn't seem to mind. Day 8 was quite warm, but it didn't seem like the snow was melting. It kept falling and appeared dry and powdery. I went out to shovel, but I wore shorts and a t-shirt. Snow be damned. Hotshot would have been proud of me. As I was clearing my driveway, I tripped over myself and spilled my body into a pile on my neighbor's driveway. I hadn't felt snow at all until then because of my get-up. Strangely, it didn't feel cold at all. It felt warm to the touch, only slightly higher than my body temperature. It was a hug from a close friend, a gentle embrace from your broken-in chair, welcoming and protective at the same time. It rolled off of my body like a dry powder. I cupped some into my hand and it started shimmering, almost like it was moving. It looked nice, like a billion little diamonds sparkling in the sunlight. My arms and legs became warmer, and my skin started to turn bright red. It doesn't feel like a cold burn, the way you'd expect frostbite to be. It's more of a cozy blanket wrapped around you. I can't believe I waited so long to touch snow, to feel its embrace. I've stopped shoveling and snow keeps falling. The plows have stopped completely and a few other neighbors look like they've embraced snow and stopped cleaning, which is great. I think everything looks better now with snow on it. My arms and legs aren't red anymore. My whole body is white, just like snow, and I can see my skin moving around. It feels like a loving, soft, warm massage. My front door is almost entirely covered in snow. It'll be great when the house is covered. Things will be so beautiful then. I understand now why Hotshot didn't want to come out anymore. It's so cozy in there. For those of you still out there battling the elements, think about it. Wouldn't you rather be inside, cozy and warm, with the peace and quiet that snow brings when it covers the outside world? It's very nice. Before you settle in, go outside and play. Somebody built a snowman behind my house and it refuses to melt. Posted by you/hello help hello. The snowman appeared 2 weeks ago. I remember looking out of my back window one morning, a steaming cup of coffee in my hands, and there it was, on the empty field that stretched between my garden and the forest. 3 balls of snow stacked atop each other, with 2 thin branches sticking out of the side. Pretty bog standard all in all. It was facing away from me and staring at the distant tree line, as if waiting for something to emerge from the dense thicket. I didn't pay much attention to the thing. It was just an ordinary snowman after all. By now, I am wondering whether there were some details that should have roused my suspicion. I do not recall, for example, there being any footprints around the snowman, nor any signs of the snow having been gathered and rolled into its form. It was almost as if the figure had risen from the pristine white surface like a budding plant, or is my memory just playing a trick on me? Whatever may be the case, I didn't focus any further attention on the snowman. It became just another random background element that my conscious mind swept aside. The snowfall grew thicker, then it lessened, then it started to thaw. Soon the white winter scenery began to revert to its usual brown and green colors. The blanket of snow, which had formerly covered the entirety of the field, shrank to a bunch of disconnected islands, and then vanished completely. It was at this point in time that I took note of the snowman once more. Unlike the surrounding icy material, its body had managed to hold onto its form somehow. A last patch of white grew around its base in a vague circle. A strange sight, but not one I couldn't explain away. Of course, snow and ice would remain a bit longer when it stacked more densely. On the street, there were also still some snow hills holding on after having been piled up by the communal plow. A perfectly rational explanation. Nonetheless, I now began to regularly check up on the figure out in the field. Every morning, I'd step to the window and glance out and see it still standing there, staring at the trees. Everywhere else in our small community, the last remnants of those distant snow days shrunk to tiny specks of dirty white, clinging to shadowed alcoves where the rays of sun didn't quite manage to reach. Only the snowman didn't seem affected by the rising temperature. 2 days ago, a cold, wet ice rain started to fall and began melting away whatever snow had managed to hold out until now. Every hour, I returned to the window, checking again and again the status of the snowman. It had looked completely fresh and unblemished in the morning, but soon it too began to be worn down by the downpour. Its body began to slack to the side and took on more of a darkish color. One of its arms dislocated and fell into the mud. I relaxed. I hadn't even noticed how tense the strange sight of the snowman had made me, but that was over now. It was a normal snowman after all. It just took a little longer to melt. Nothing unusual here. I went to bed holding on to the firm belief that its remains would be gone come sunrise. I slept. I woke. I staggered into the kitchen. I poured myself a coffee. I looked out the window. The snowman was standing in the middle of the field, unblemished, perfectly white. Its 2 branch arms stretched out to the side. The mug nearly slipped from my fingers. How was this possible? Somebody must have rebuilt it, but how? There was no more snow to use as building material anywhere. For the first time since its appearance, I decided to take a closer look. I stomped through the muddy field and circled the white figure. The snow looked fresh, no sign of it having melted or dirtied in the slightest. I stopped in front of it. Since it had been turned away from my house, I had never seen its face. Now that I could get a good look, a shiver ran down my spine. At first glance, it had all the features it should have, but the longer I stared at it, the more I noticed all the things off about it. The stones representing the eyes were rough and edged, and noticeably different, giving the snowman a slightly menacing look. The frozen carrot nose was broken in the middle and sporting various black blotches. It must have started to rot prior to being used as building material. For the mouth, it seemed that whoever created the thing had run out of stones, and instead opted to just smear some brown dirt into a vaguely mouth-like shape. A slight feeling of disgust spread in my stomach. With a quick step forward, I crossed the remaining distance between me and the snowman, and gave its icy body a shove. It toppled over without resistance and crumbled on the floor, just like one would suspect from a regular snowman. Satisfied with its destruction, I made my way back home. The next morning, I awoke with an eerie feeling. A cold air spread through my bedroom, and had managed to slip beneath my blanket, granting me an uneasy sleep. I was sure I dreamed of the snowman's face. I struggled out of bed and headed to my bedroom window to check the backyard, and there it stood, just like every other morning. This time, however, its position had changed. Instead of staring towards the distant trees from the middle of the empty field, it was now facing my house, leaning at the wooden fence that marked the beginning of my garden. At first, a sense of terror crept through my stomach. My muscles clenched. The hairs in the gape of my neck prickled. I held my breath. Then the moment passed, and I let out a short laugh. A prank. It must be some elaborate prank after all. What else could it be? All those mysterious pranksters had nearly managed to get under my skin. I shook my head and went to shower and have breakfast. The snowman could wait. An hour later, I made my way through the garden. I could already tell from some distance that whoever built the snowman a second time had gone through painstaking efforts to recreate its horrible face. The snow itself looked freshly fallen as well, despite the fact that it hadn't snowed in a week. This was quite the effort for some simple prank. The white figure had its claw-like branch arms resting on the fence. Its head was slightly angled upward and to the side, as if he was focused on something. I turned and followed the gaze of its mismatching eyes. The feeling of amusement drained from my mind. The shock returned. It was looking right at my bedroom window. This didn't feel like a prank anymore, more like some sort of threat. Within minutes, I had grabbed a large shovel, which I had used to clean up the snow some weeks ago, and swung it at the snowman. It crumbled after the first few hits, but I kept smashing and smashing, making sure to grind its rotting carrot nose to a pulp during the process. I didn't expect this to be the end. Whoever kept recreating the snowman would for sure return. There was a long night lying ahead of me. This time, I'd stay up and catch whoever was responsible for this macabre joke. Home office thankfully allowed some flexibility when it came to my working hours, and so I stayed in the kitchen after the sun had set, staring at the monitor of my laptop and heading to the window every 10 minutes to glare out into the garden. The sky was clear and the moon covered the landscape in its cool night. If someone was coming, I'd spot them for sure. I checked again and again, and again, bouncing back and forth between my computer and the window. When the sun rose, I couldn't help but to feel a bit silly. Nobody had snuck around my house. Nobody had rebuilt the snowman. Maybe the mysterious prankster ran out of snow or patience. At least I could head to sleep without worry. My footsteps faltered when I approached the stairs leading up to my bedroom. Something was wrong. A cold spread through the floorboards beneath my feet. The tiny rectangle of glass on my front door was covered in a sheet of morning frost. My breath exited my mouth in a slight fog. I took a step towards the door. The temperature seemed to drop even further. I put my hand on the handle. The metal was freezing under my touch. I pulled it open, and there it was, staring right into my eyes. Its disgusting features had been restored without fault. Even the smashed, rotting carrot nose had been replaced by an identical one. It looked just as it had the first day, save for one little detail. One of the snowman's arms had been repositioned. It was stretched forward, reaching for my doorknob. I got snowed into my cabin, and something wanted me to open that door. Posted by u/dark-n-creepy. I kept telling myself it was over when the hinges on the door snapped with a banging. The wood splintered, and with it the wooden door collapsed against the floor. The small screws that held it in place echoed while rolling, matching the beating of my heart as it wanted to spring out of my chest. I was stuck in my summer cabin during the winter, snowed in because I was too stupid to leave before the storms came. The Forest Service announced that it was time to leave about 2 weeks ago, because my cabin is located on the top of some mountains that get too much snow during the winter to live in. I usually always leave on time when the Forest Service announces the closure, but I thought it would be fun to try and stay here over the winter. I stayed mainly because of the quarantine, and with everything closed, I thought it would be better. It was something that I had never done before, but I was prepared, as I boarded up the lower windows like I usually did to make sure the snow doesn't break through. I also stockpiled enough food to last until February, and made sure to call up the power company to make sure that they don't cut me off this year, because I was planning on staying longer. I didn't regret the idea until the first snowstorm. That's when it really hit me. There was no leaving until the snow melted away, and this was only going to grow as it was too cold for it to melt, and there were many more snowstorms coming my way. I spent most of my time building 1,000-piece puzzles while listening to the old CDs I had stored up there. The memories of seeing my wife and children's smiling faces sitting at this table from times long gone brightened up my mood for a moment. The memories of seeing my wife and children's smiling faces sitting at this table from times long gone brightened up my mood for a moment, but it was short as I wished they were here with me, especially my wife who had died 4 years ago. While thinking about her, I heard some scratching coming from the back wall. Wondering if an animal was trying to get in, I opened the front door and yelled to scare it off. I heard it stop, and with a smile I slowly began to close the door before I heard whispering. It was faint, but it was coming closer. Standing there, I was wondering what was making that sound. And then I remembered I had my CD player on. That must be what I heard. So I brushed it off and returned back to working on the puzzle, after grabbing a drink from the fridge. Upon closing the door, I heard the scratching again coming from the back wall. But this time, I just let it be, as it didn't bother me enough, and it could probably just be branches brushing against the side. "Dad, come look at this," a voice whispered from behind me. A tingle struck down my spine as I looked back to see no one there. The crazy thing is, the voice seemed so familiar, but one I hadn't heard in so long. "Hello?" I asked the now quiet cabin after turning off the CD player. "Dad, it's cold. Help me," the voice said again, and it hit me. This was the voice of my daughter, but when she was younger. "Sarah? Is that you?" I asked, wondering what the hell was going on. "Dad, it's cold out here. Please, let me inside," the voice said again, but more clear. Now I knew for a fact that this was not just my imagination. Was my daughter actually calling for me? Wait, no, that's crazy because she doesn't have that young childish voice anymore. She's married and is expecting to have a baby girl in spring, so there's no possible... "Are you gonna let me die, Dad? Like you let Mom?" the voice said from outside. My body froze like a statue, as I wondered if this was just my imagination or something much, much darker. "Please, it's so cold." "Who are you?" I asked with a quivering tone. "It's me, Sarah, your daughter. Please open the door or I'm going to freeze out here." The voice still sounded off as the tone didn't match up right. It was like a robot and devoid of emotion, which made it sound even scarier. At the time, I slowly tried to think of what to do, and I instinctively grabbed the metal rod used for stirring the fire and clenched it in my hands tightly while moving away from the door. "You're not my daughter. Get the hell off of my property, whoever you are," I screamed while backing away from the door. The voice changed again and shocked me to my core. "Honey, why won't you let us in? Sarah wants to warm up next to the fire, and I want to see your smiling face again." Upon hearing this, I nearly dropped the metal rod to the ground, as it was the voice of my wife, and I took a step forward thinking it was actually her. My mind was flooded with happy memories, until I remembered attending her funeral. The voice outside wasn't my wife. It couldn't possibly be. "What do you want, please? Whoever's out there, I'm just an old man. I got nothing really worth stealing here. Please, leave me alone." "Honey, don't you recognize me? Please take the boards off the windows so we can see each other." Frightened to my very core, and having no idea on what to do next, I stayed silent while moving towards the bathroom. I snuck inside and locked the door, just hoping whatever was out there would go away. Was someone trying to mess with me? But how did they even get out here with all this snow? Well, it's not too bad yet, so it's possible someone could get up here, but who? Who would be on the other side of the door? I heard the voice say something that I couldn't hear through the bathroom door right before I heard a large bang on the door. It was followed by another, and another, as I could hear the hinges loosening up. I kept telling myself it was over when the hinges on the door snapped with the banging. The wood splintered, and with it the wooden door collapsed against the floor. The small screws that held it in echoed while rolling, matching the beating of my heart, as it wanted to spring out of my chest. I sat on the bathroom floor, dead silent, listening to every sound that followed. In a twisted voice, I could hear the words echoing, "Come out," through the insulated log walls. I held my breath, listening to the woodboards creak with every step from whatever just had broken down the door. Whoever this was had to be sadistic and trying to mess with me and not just rob me. I thought to myself. That's up until I heard the sniffing, and the footsteps switched to crawling that came closer and closer until whatever it was on the other side of the bathroom door. "I smell you," the voice said deeply. Chills ran up and down my body while I grasped the metal rod I still had even tighter, getting ready for the door to be broken down just like the front door was. So I sat there, waiting to fight for my life, when I heard a voice call for me saying faintly, "Mr. Miller, are you there? I heard you were planning on staying over the winter and I'm sorry, but you're not allowed." Whoa! "Mr. Miller, are you in there? What happened to your door?" I didn't know what to do or if I should warn whoever was out there, or was it just another trick of the thing before who imitated my family members. I took in a deep breath and knew I couldn't just stay where I was, so I unlocked the door and swung it open so fast just in case I could hit whatever was just outside of it. As I did, I felt the door hit something, and so I shoved the door even harder until I heard someone winch out in pain. I pulled back the door to see a park ranger laying on the ground unconscious. Quickly, I looked around to see if anything else was there, just waiting to attack me at any waking moment. But luckily, I didn't see anything. "Sorry, are you okay?" I asked the park ranger, who I tried to help out. "Yeah," he said while rubbing his head before continuing. "The real question is, are you okay? What's going on here? I thought you got attacked by a bear or something with the sides of this cabin all scratched up. Especially with that door being knocked over and letting in all the cold. Honestly, I don't know what was here. I never saw it, but it sounded like another person. Are there any other vehicles out there besides mine and yours?" "No, I don't remember seeing any more," he replied. "No one else is up here besides us because this area is closed during the winter. We got a call from the power company informing us that you were still up here and were requesting power over the winter. Look, we don't want to kick you out of your own cabin, but we have these rules to keep everyone safe. Now we need to get the hell out of here right now." "I get it, but what's the rush? I still need to clean this place up and fix the door and—" "There's no time. We've already been here long enough and we need to leave. Your vehicle probably won't be able to make it down, but I got snow chains on my Jeep, so just hop into mine and we can get out of here. You can't expect me to just up and leave everything here, do you?" I asked, frantically. "If you want to live, I do. Plus, you can come back once winter ends, but we need to leave before that thing comes back." "Wait, what? Are you talking about that thing that knocked down my door? You know about it? What is that thing?" The park ranger looked at me and just shook his head while widening his eyes, saying, "All you need to know is that we need to get the hell out of here." He then grabbed my arm and yanked me towards the front door. While we were leaving, I could hear scratching coming from the back wall again. I ignored it as we ran and I hopped into his Jeep. Quickly, he drove down the snowy mountain, trying his best to keep the Jeep from sliding off of the side. While he drove, I asked, "So what was that thing that broke down my door? And don't try to sugarcoat it at all. Or tell me it was a bear, because no bear can mimic human voices like that hellish thing did." The ranger sighed before saying, "I guess you already know enough that it won't make a difference if I told you what we know. But to be honest, we're just as confused as you on what that thing is. We've tried to figure it out over the years, but every time we leave people in this area over the winter to investigate, they all end up missing and there's no explanation of who or what did it." "Really? So I'm not losing my mind at all. What else do you know about it?" I asked. "Nothing more than I told you, besides the fact that this thing only seems to come out during the winter. That's the main reason we have the rule for all the people who own cabins in this area, that they aren't allowed to stay here during the winter like you. We blame it on the snow and bitterly cold winters, and that's the reason they can't come up to their cabins all year long. And don't get me wrong, both of those things are good reasons. It's just that the main reason is because of that thing. We have no idea on how to deal with it, so we've been following these rules and regulations since the 1950s, when it was first sighted. Upon hearing this, I sat there motionless, not knowing if this guy was trying to mess with me because I never actually saw the monster and only heard it, and it could have been him the whole time. Plus, when I opened the bathroom door, I hit that guy, and that's exactly where the creature was just moments before. I kept wondering this until I heard faint scratching coming from the back of his Jeep.